Descending the stairs of the royal plane at London Airport on the 7th of February 1952, the former Princess Elizabeth took her first steps on British soil as Queen. She was only 25. Days earlier, she'd bid farewell to her parents and sister as she and Prince Philip set off on their 5-month tour to Australia and New Zealand. Little did she know, as the door to the plane closed, that it would be the last time she'd see her beloved father alive.
It was the beginning of a tour he had hoped one day to make himself. It was a farewell. It was also, as events turned out, goodbye.
6 days later, during a stopover at Treetops Hotel in Kenya, a Reuters news flash alerted the accompanying media of the King's demise. As soon as the Princess's private secretary was able to confirm the report, Prince Philip informed his wife. The time difference, combined with their remote location, meant she was one of the last to know. Following a 19-hour flight home, the royal plane landed back at London Airport. The royal couple were driven to Clarence House in a car bearing the sovereign's arms, and the next day, the accession of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II was proclaimed.
With one voice and consent of tongue and heart, publish and proclaim that the high and mighty Princess Elizabeth Alexandra Mary is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become Queen Elizabeth II.
At the time of her birth, Princess Elizabeth was never expected to ascend the throne. Were it not for the 1936 abdication of her uncle, Edward VIII, the monarchy as it exists today would be very different indeed.
A few hours ago, I discharged my last duty as King and Emperor.
Had he fulfilled his kingly duties, he would have married and fathered an heir of his own. But his infatuation with twice-divorced American socialite Wallis Simpson led to an unprecedented and dramatic shift within the House of Windsor. As his brother's successor, King George VI renewed the general populace's faith in the centuries-old tradition. Re-establishing a sense of national unity, he led his country through the war years, and his overriding popularity in life resulted in widespread affection for his daughter in death. For the majority of Britons alive today, Queen Elizabeth II was the only sovereign they've ever known. As Britain's longest reigning monarch, she was also the country's longest lived, and for a short time she was the oldest serving sovereign in the world.
And you can't look down to read the speech, you have to take the speech up. Because if you did, your neck would break, it would fall off. So there are some disadvantages to crowns, but otherwise they're quite important things.
Only the sixth queen since William the Conqueror took the throne over 1,000 years ago, her historic reign granted stability and continuity. The prospect of a monarchy without her will, for some, be impossible to comprehend. During her 7 decades on the throne, the Queen presided over some of the greatest socio-economic changes of the 20th and 21st centuries. In 1952, at the time of her accession, Britain was fundamentally a white Christian country at the centre of a great empire. It was an age in which men dominated the workforce and women largely stayed at home. Today, it's a culturally diverse nation in which multi-faith communities live side by side, and women are often the primary or sole breadwinners. An unlikely feminist role model, the Queen held the highest position in the land for more than 70 years. Supported by Prince Philip, she observed a regimented and inflexible royal calendar, and together the couple set numerous records, many of which will never be broken. Though her husband spent his public life walking one step behind his wife, theirs was a happy union, and the nation was fortunate the Queen chose a man whose devotion to service equalled her own.
He has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years, and I and his whole family, and this and many other countries, owe him a debt greater than he would ever claim, or we shall ever know.
In terms of her lasting legacy, the continued existence of the Commonwealth of Nations arguably represents one of her greatest achievements. When she assumed the throne, the voluntary organisation numbered 8 countries. Decades on, it consists of 54 independent nations, many of which chose to retain the Queen as head of state. Of course, there are some who question its validity, but according to world leaders, it's endured because of the dialogue it fosters between member nations and the leaders' mutual fondness for the Queen.
As for Her Majesty, the Queen's been a source of inspiration for me, like so many people around the world. She is truly one of my favorite people.
Whether allowing herself to be filmed at Buckingham Palace with James Bond, or solidifying the peace process in Northern Ireland by sharing a symbolic handshake with the leaders of Sinn Féin, the Queen was able to remain above party politics while also retaining her place in the public's affection. As Scottish nationalists looked to the 2014 referendum on independence, they vowed to keep the Queen as head of state. A devoutly religious woman, she solemnly swore on Coronation Day to govern her people, cause law and justice in mercy to be executed, and maintain the laws of God and the true profession of the gospel. She rededicated herself to her role on multiple occasions, and each time her words offered a clear indication she had no intention of stepping down.
It remains a great pleasure and honour to serve you as head of the Commonwealth, and to observe with pride and satisfaction that this is a flourishing network.
Now, as we collectively mourn her loss, it is Prince Charles's turn to embrace his destiny. Though the preservation of the monarchy ultimately rests in his hands and those of his successors, the Queen leaves behind the single greatest blueprint of any previous sovereign. The world is unlikely to witness another reign as long and eventful as hers. In a letter to Queen Mary in 1929, the Queen's mother said of her young daughter, "It almost frightens me that the people should love her so much. I suppose it is a good thing, and I hope she will be worthy of it." As we finally bid a sad farewell to Queen Elizabeth II, I suspect many would agree. She was very worthy indeed.
We should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.